At the beach with his fiancée, the Korean Mafia boss turns pale after seeing his ex with twins. He was a legend. The dragon of soul who painted the streets red and vanished like smoke. She was the only innocent thing he ever touched, so he chose death over dragging her into darkness. 5 years of hiding, 5 years of lies, until he sees her at his own resort, with 2 identical little boys, their eyes fierce like his own. His fiancée stands beside him, clueless. His carefully constructed paradise just shattered with his buried past, and the man who never showed fear is about to be exposed. This is the story of the enforcer who faked his death, and the woman who raised his warriors alone. Welcome to a love that survived the underworld. It just waited. Hey everyone, I'm back with another explosive Korean romance that's guaranteed to stop your heart. Before we dive into this mafia boss's nightmare reunion, tap that like button if you're obsessed with dangerous men who'll destroy anyone for family. I see you out there watching. Drop a comment with your city and the current time so our global squad can connect in the thread. And if you're new here, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next deadly twist in this unforgettable series. Alright, let's step into the fire. The Coral Bay Resort stretched across its private island like a postcard from heaven. Yeong-dong moved through his beachside tiki bar like he owned every grain of sand beneath his feet. Because he did, not through inheritance or business acumen, but through blood money laundered clean over 5 brutal years. At 38, he'd mastered the art of disappearing. His resort, Paradise Found, had become the ultimate sanctuary for tourists seeking tropical escape. His new identity was airtight, backed by forged documents that cost him 3 contacts and a bullet wound. His past had been buried so deep that even the syndicate believed the dragon was dead. And yet, as he laughed with Gung Woong behind the bar, her hand warm in his, he couldn't help but scan the perimeter. Old habits, 3 exits mapped, security cameras monitored. The weight of the blade still strapped to his ankle, even in paradise. Gung Woong didn't know any of this. She was busy mixing a batch of her famous coconut mojitos for the afternoon crowd, her smile genuine and unguarded. The perfect partner for a resort owner. Her kindness had never known violence. The diamond on her finger caught the sunlight, modest and sweet, chosen because she'd pointed at it through a shop window and said it reminded her of sea glass. Their wedding was 6 weeks away, a small ceremony on the beach at sunset. Everything was simple. Everything was exactly as he'd designed it to be, until he saw her. Near the surfboard rack, partially hidden by a family unloading beach gear, a woman stood watching 2 small boys race toward the water, her posture impossibly familiar. Same defensive stance, shoulders slightly raised like she was ready to fight or flee. Same graceful tension he'd memorized during 2 years of stolen moments before the world exploded. Matilda Graham. 5 years collapsed into nothing. He was 33 again, standing in their apartment with blood still under his fingernails, watching her sleep for the last time. He'd kissed her forehead, whispered that he loved her, staged his own murder before sunrise because the syndicate's enemies were circling, because staying meant watching her die, because loving her was the most dangerous thing he'd ever done. He'd convinced himself it was mercy, that Matilda would grieve and move on, find someone safe who worked in an office and came home without checking for tails. That love was a weakness enforcers couldn't afford when half of Seoul wanted them dead. He'd chosen survival. He'd walked away from the only person who had ever seen past the violence to the man underneath. And he'd never looked back. Couldn't. Because looking back meant admitting that killing yourself to save someone might be the cruelest thing you could do to them. Yeong-dong didn't do regret. His kills were clean. His escapes were flawless. His new life was a perfectly executed con. But now she was 40 feet away. And she wasn't alone. 2 little boys orbited around her, identical down to the stubborn set of their jaws as they argued over which surfboard to choose. They couldn't be more than 4 years old. Their dark hair stuck up in the same defiant way despite obvious attempts to comb it down. One boy, slightly bolder, kept pointing at the biggest board. His aggressive stance, the way his small fists clenched and his chin jutted forward in challenge. Yeong-dong's entire body went ice cold. That was his stance. His exact posture before a fight. The same coiled readiness he'd had in every syndicate training photo. The look that made grown men step back. The coconut in his hand slipped, cracking against the bamboo bar. Gung Woong turned, concerned. "Babe, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." But Yeong-dong couldn't hear her questions. The tropical sounds faded into white noise. The world had narrowed to a single devastating truth. He had sons, 2 of them, and he'd been dead to them their entire lives. His feet moved on instinct, muscle memory from 100 approaches on 100 targets. Gung Wung's hand slipped from his arm as he walked toward the surfboards, toward Matilda, toward the 2 boys who were now looking up at the sound of breaking coconut shells. And when they turned, Yongdong saw his own eyes staring back at him. Doubled. The same sharp focus. The same hunter's gaze. The same predatory awareness that had made syndicate rivals back down without a word spoken. 15 feet away. He stopped. Matilda had noticed him now. She stood slowly, every muscle tensing, instinctively moving between him and the boys. Her face cycled through shock, recognition, disbelief, and finally settled on something far more dangerous than anger. The look she'd given him the night she found out what he really did for a living. The look that said, "You're a ghost, and ghosts don't get to come back." The afternoon sun hung heavy over Coral Bay Resort, turning the ocean into liquid gold. Yongdong leaned against the bamboo bar, genuinely laughing for what felt like the first time in weeks. Gung Wung had just told him about Mrs. Chen from Bungalow 7 trying to negotiate a discount using her Pomeranian as emotional leverage. She said Mr. Fluffkins has separation anxiety and needs an ocean view. Gung Wung giggled, wiping down the counter with practiced efficiency. Like the dog cares about the view. Yongdong shook his head, grinning. "Did you give it to her?" "Of course I did. I'm a sucker." She reached across the bar and tapped his nose with one wet finger. "Just like someone else I know who gave that honeymooning couple a free upgrade because they reminded you of us. That's different. They were in love. We're in love, you ridiculous man." Gung Wung's smile could have powered the entire island. She grabbed a fresh coconut from the ice bucket, expertly macheteing the top off in 2 clean strikes. The blade work would have impressed his old crew. She had no idea. "Here, your favorite. Extra rum, light on the judgment." She slid the coconut across the bar. The little umbrella tilted at a jaunty angle. Their fingers touched as he took it, and she held on for just a moment longer, her thumb tracing circles on his knuckles. 6 weeks, she said softly. Her eyes were the color of warm honey, completely unguarded. 6 weeks and you're stuck with me forever, Dong. Last chance to run. Not running. His voice came out rougher than intended. Never running from you. Good. Because I already ordered 200 white orchids, and if you bail, I'm hunting you down. She was joking, but there was something fierce underneath it. Gung Wung loved hard and completely. It was one of the things that terrified him most about her. He raised the coconut in a mock toast, to Mrs. Chen's emotional support Pomeranian and to us. To us and our beautiful, simple, drama-free life. She clinked her water bottle against his coconut. God, we're so boring and I love it. Yongdong took a sip, the rum burning perfectly down his throat, and let his gaze drift past Gung Wung's shoulder toward the beach. Late afternoon meant families packing up, couples taking sunset walks, the daily rhythm of paradise that he'd learned to anticipate and appreciate. That's when his world stopped. Near the surfboard rack, maybe 40 feet from the bar, a woman stood in the sand. Her back was to him, but he would have recognized that posture in complete darkness, in a crowd of thousands, with a bullet in his skull. The way she shifted her weight slightly to her left side, compensating for an old injury she'd gotten when she was 16. The particular shade of her hair, black with hints of deep brown when the light hit it just right. The graceful economy of her movements, as she reached down to adjust something at her feet. Matilda. His first thought was hallucination. Post-traumatic stress finally catching up after 5 years of looking over his shoulder. The dragon of soul seeing ghosts because guilt was a patient hunter. But then she straightened, and 2 small figures came into focus beside her. Boys, identical. 4, maybe 5 years old. White button-down shirts already half untucked. Blue shorts sandy at the knees. They were arguing about something, their hands gesturing wildly, and even from this distance, Yongdong could see the aggressive set of their shoulders, the stubborn jut of their chins. The coconut drink turned to ash in his mouth. One of the boys, the slightly taller one, grabbed a yellow surfboard and tried to drag it toward the water. His brother immediately protested, pointing at a blue board instead. Their argument escalated, voices carrying across the sand in rapid Korean. Matilda said something sharp, and both boys froze mid-motion, properly chastised but still glaring at each other with identical expressions of frustrated determination. That expression. Young Dong had seen it in the mirror 10,000 times. The exact same furrowed brow, the same tight press of lips, the same refusal to back down even when outmatched. The color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. His vision tunneled. The tropical sounds around him, the reggae music from the speakers, the laughter of tourists, the crash of waves all faded into a high-pitched ringing. "Babe?" Gung Wung's voice cut through the static. "Yong, you okay?" He couldn't respond. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Matilda was supposed to be in Seoul. Matilda was supposed to have moved on, found someone safe, built a life that didn't include a dead man's ghost. Matilda was absolutely, definitely not supposed to be at his resort with two boys who had his eyes, his stance, his entire genetic blueprint stamped across their faces like an accusation. "Yongdong, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" Gung Wung's hand touched his arm, and he flinched. The coconut slipped from his grip, cracking against the bamboo bar and spilling rum and coconut water across the counter. He watched, detached, as the liquid pooled and dripped onto the sand below. Gung Wung followed his gaze, turning to look at whatever had stolen his attention so completely. He wanted to stop her, wanted to turn her face back to him, wanted to rewind 60 seconds and keep her in the beautiful ignorance of their simple, drama-free life. But it was too late. She saw Matilda first, saw the elegant woman in the sundress, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Then her gaze dropped to the boys, still bickering over surfboards, and Gung Wung went very, very still. Even someone with no context could see it. The boys looked exactly like a younger version of the man standing frozen behind the bar. Same sharp features softened by youth, same intense dark eyes, same determined posture, same everything. "Dong?" Gung Wung's voice had changed. The warmth had evaporated, replaced by something cautious and confused. "Who are they?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. What could he possibly say? The truth was too large, too complicated, too devastating to fit into words. The lie wouldn't come either, blocked by the sheer magnitude of what was standing 40 feet away on his beach. Gung Wung looked back at the boys, then at him again, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. "Those kids, they look just like..." "Dong, who are they?" The taller boy, the one with the yellow surfboard, looked up at that moment. His gaze swept the beach and landed, with uncanny precision, directly on Yongdong. For 3 heartbeats, father and son stared at each other across the sand. The boy's eyes narrowed, analytical and far too old for his age, studying Yongdong with the kind of focus that made veteran criminals nervous. Then the boy tugged on Matilda's dress and pointed. Yongdong watched as Matilda turned, following her son's gesture, and their eyes met for the first time in 5 years. Her face went through a dozen emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, disbelief, recognition. And then, finally, a cold fury that hit him harder than any fist ever had. Beside him, Gung Wung whispered, "Oh my God. Dong, what did you do?" He had no answer. The Dragon of Seoul, the man who'd orchestrated impossible heists and survived situations that killed legends, had absolutely no answer. If you despise secrets that ruin relationships, smash that subscribe button. Comment Truth Matters if you think Yongdong should have told Gung Wung about his past before proposing. Yongdong moved before conscious thought could stop him. Muscle memory from 100 intercepts, 1,000 operations where timing meant the difference between success and a body bag. He vaulted over the bar with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent years training his body to be a weapon, ignoring Gung Wung's startled cry behind him. "Stay there," he said without looking back. Not a request. A command in a voice she'd never heard him use before. His feet hit the sand, and he was already calculating angles, approach vectors, the cleanest path that would keep the boys from seeing him too clearly. Matilda had turned away again, crouching down to say something to the shorter twin, her body language protective and tight. She hadn't fully registered that it was him yet, hadn't processed that her dead fiancé was alive and running a resort like some kind of sick cosmic joke. He had maybe 30 seconds before that changed. The tiki hut sat off to the side of the main beach area, a covered structure where they stored extra equipment and served afternoon snacks. Its shadows would give them privacy. Its position would shield the boys from seeing too much. Yongdong angled his approach, coming at Matilda from the side, using a group of German tourists as temporary cover. 20 feet, 15, 10. Jack, put that board back, Matilda was saying in Korean, her voice carrying that particular maternal warning that meant business. We talked about asking first, but Jeremy wants the blue one and I want. Jeremy can speak for himself. Both of you. 5 minutes to decide together or we're going back to the bungalow. 5 feet. Young-dong's hand closed around her elbow, gentle but absolutely firm. Matilda. Now. Don't make a scene. She spun, instinct turning her toward the threat, and her free hand came up fast, aiming for his throat in a defensive strike he'd taught her years ago in case anyone from the syndicate ever came for her. He caught her wrist before it connected, redirected her momentum, and pulled her toward the tiki hut, in one smooth motion that would have looked to anyone watching like an intimate embrace between lovers. Let go of me, she hissed, but she was already moving with him, her maternal instinct overriding everything else. Get the threat away from the children first, assess later. Good, she'd learned. The boys stay where they are, he said quietly, urgently. I'm not here to hurt anyone. We need to talk. 30 seconds, please. They rounded the corner of the tiki hut and he released her immediately, hands up, stepping back to give her space. The shadows swallowed them, the sounds of the beach muffling into distant ambiance. Matilda stared at him like he was a corpse that had climbed out of its grave. Her chest was heaving, her eyes wide and wild. You're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Matilda. The slap came so fast he almost didn't register it until his cheek was stinging and his head had snapped to the side. She'd put everything behind it. 5 years of grief, rage, betrayal, and whatever else she'd been carrying since the night he'd disappeared. He took it. Didn't block, didn't move, didn't defend. He deserved it. Deserved much worse. You're dead, she repeated, and now her voice was shaking. They found your car, your blood, your wallet. The syndicate sent flowers to a funeral I held for an empty casket. I know. I'm sorry. I had to what? Had to let me believe you were murdered? Had to let me spend 6 months looking over my shoulder waiting for them to come for me next? Had to let me wake up every night screaming because I kept seeing what they might have done to you? Her hands were fists now, trembling at her sides. Tears were starting, angry tears that she blinked back furiously. You died. I mourned you. I moved on. I can explain. Explain? She laughed, a broken sound that cut through him worse than any blade. You disappeared 5 years ago without a word, without a phone call, without a note. You let me think you were dead young. You let me bury you. I was protecting you. The words came out defensive, hollow even to his own ears. The syndicate was cleaning house. They were killing anyone connected to the Lee operation. I had targets on me from 3 different crews. Staying meant painting you with the same target. So you chose death over trust, over telling me, over letting me decide if I wanted to face that risk with you. Matilda's voice dropped to something more dangerous than shouting. You made that choice alone. I made the only choice that kept you alive. And it never occurred to you that I was already pregnant? The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. That I'd been trying to tell you for 3 days before you vanished? That I was carrying your children? The world tilted. Young Dong grabbed the tiki hut support beam to steady himself. What? Jack and Jeremy, your sons, 4 years old, conceived that last week we were together before you decided to become a ghost. Her laugh was bitter. I found out 2 weeks after your funeral. Stood in a bathroom at my sister's apartment, staring at 2 pink lines, wondering how I was supposed to raise children alone when their father was dead and the syndicate might come for them. Matilda, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You were too busy being dead. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a fierce whisper. Do you know what it's like to tell 4-year-old boys that their father was a hero who died protecting people? Do you know how many times Jack has asked me what you looked like? Jeremy has nightmares where faceless men come to take me away like they took his daddy. I never meant. You never asked. You decided. You chose. You played God with my life and theirs, and you didn't give any of us a vote. She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. And now you're here, running a resort, playing house with some woman, living your best life while I've been raising your sons in Seoul, jumping at every shadow, wondering if the syndicate would ever figure out those boys were yours. The syndicate thinks I'm dead. Did they? It wasn't a question. Then why am I here, young? Why am I at a resort on a random island in the middle of nowhere instead of home in Seoul? The cold that had been pooling in his gut turned to ice. Matilda, why are you here? She met his eyes, and he saw the fear underneath the anger. The same fear he'd seen the night everything went wrong 5 years ago. 2 weeks ago, someone burned down my apartment, left a message spray-painted on the wall. A viper. Jack and Jeremy were at my sister's. We barely got out. The Viper Syndicate. Not a question, a death sentence. I didn't know where else to go. The twins needed somewhere safe, somewhere far from Korea. I found this place online, some resort with good security and privacy. It was supposed to be anonymous. Random. Her voice cracked. It was supposed to be nowhere near you because you were supposed to be dead. Mommy? A small voice cut through the tension. Both of them froze. Mommy, where are you? Jack. Or Jeremy. Young Dong couldn't tell from voice alone. Matilda's entire body went rigid, her maternal instinct overriding everything else. I'm coming, baby, she called back, her voice instantly steady, despite the tears still wet on her cheeks. She looked at Young Dong with pure venom. Stay away from them. Stay away from me. Whatever life you built here, whatever lies you're living, I don't care. We're leaving tomorrow. You can't leave. If the Viper Syndicate found you in Seoul, they'll track you wherever you go. Then that's my problem, not yours. You stopped being part of our lives 5 years ago. She turned to go. Matilda, please. You're a ghost, Young Dong, and ghosts don't get to be fathers. Gung Woong had never been the kind of woman who sat still when something was wrong. Her mother used to say she had too much fire, too much need to fix things, to understand things, to make everything right. So when Young Dong vaulted over the bar like some kind of action movie character and disappeared into the beach crowd, leaving her standing there with spilled coconut water soaking into her sandals, she gave him exactly 90 seconds before following. She'd counted. Slowly. Trying to be reasonable. Trying to give him space to handle whatever crisis had turned his face the color of ash and stolen every ounce of warmth from his eyes. But reasonable had its limits, and watching the man she was supposed to marry in 6 weeks run toward a strange woman and 2 children who looked exactly like him had pushed Gung Woong past every reasonable boundary she possessed. She found them behind the tiki hut. Not hard, really. She just followed the sound of raised voices speaking rapid Korean, words she couldn't understand, but tone she absolutely could. Anger, pain, the particular timbre of 2 people who'd once meant everything to each other and now didn't know what they were anymore. Gung Woong stopped at the corner of the structure, her hand pressed against the bamboo siding, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She should announce herself, should clear her throat or call out or something. But her feet had rooted themselves in the sand, and her voice had disappeared entirely. Supposed to be dead, the woman was saying in English now, her accent crisp and educated. You're supposed to be dead, Young. Do you understand what you did to me? I was protecting you. That was Dong, but it wasn't Dong. The voice was the same, but the tone was all wrong. Harder, colder. The voice of someone used to giving orders and expecting them to be followed. The syndicate was... Don't. The woman cut him off. Don't you dare talk to me about the syndicate like I didn't know what you were. Like I didn't spend 2 years loving a man who came home with blood on his hands. Gung Woong's breath caught. Blood on his hands. The syndicate. What was the syndicate? Matilda, please. I raised them alone, Young. Alone. Do you understand? Your sons, Jack and Jeremy, 4 years old, and they've never met their father because their father chose to die rather than trust me with the truth. Sons. The word ricocheted through Gung Woong's chest like a bullet. Those boys on the beach weren't cousins or nephews or some coincidental resemblance. They were his. Dong had children. 2 of them. And he'd never said a word. 6 weeks from their wedding, and he'd never said a single word. Gung Woong's hand moved to her engagement ring without conscious thought, twisting it around her finger the way she did when she was anxious. The modest diamond caught the filtered sunlight coming through the tiki hut's thatched roof. Sea glass, she'd called it. Simple and beautiful and perfect for their simple, beautiful, perfect life. Except none of it was real. I didn't know you were pregnant, Dong was saying, and there was something broken in his voice now. I swear to God, Matilda, I didn't know. Would it have changed anything? Would you have stayed? Silence. long enough that Gung Wung knew the answer even before he spoke. I don't know, he said finally. Honestly, the people after me didn't care about collateral damage. They would have killed you, would have killed the babies. I couldn't, so you killed yourself instead. Very heroic, very noble, very stupid. Matilda's voice cracked. And now I'm here, running again, and you're here playing resort owner with... Her name is Gung Wung. Dong's voice softened slightly. She's my fiancée. We're getting married in 6 weeks. The words hit Gung Wung like a physical blow, even though she already knew them. Hearing him say it to this other woman, this Matilda who clearly had been everything to him once, made it real in a way that hurt worse than anything she'd expected. Congratulations. Matilda's laugh was bitter. Does she know? Does your fiancé know who you really are? What you really are? She knows what she needs to know. Which is nothing. She knows nothing. Matilda's voice rose. Does she know you used to be an enforcer for one of the most violent crime syndicates in Seoul? Does she know how many people you've killed? Does she know the Dragon of Seoul didn't die, he just got a tan and started serving cocktails? Dragon of Seoul, enforcer, crime syndicate. The words were piling up, each one rewriting everything Gung Wung thought she knew about the man she loved. That's not who I am anymore, Dong said. And God, he actually sounded like he believed it. You don't get to choose what you are, Young. You just are. And now I'm here because 2 weeks ago, someone from your old life burned down my apartment in Seoul. With my children inside, Matilda's voice dropped to something razor sharp. They left a message. A viper. Spray painted on what was left of the living room wall. Jack and Jeremy were at my sister's for the night. 5 hours later and they would have been ash. Gung Wung felt the world tilt. Someone had tried to kill children. Those beautiful little boys on the beach, arguing over surfboards. Someone had tried to murder them because of whatever Dong used to be. The Viper Syndicate, Dong said, and now his voice was pure ice. They found you. They found someone. Maybe me. Maybe you. Maybe they're just cleaning up old business. I don't know and I don't care. I just need my son safe and away from Seoul and away from you and away from everything connected to that life. Running won't help. If they tracked you to Seoul, they'll track you anywhere. Then what do you suggest? That I trust the ghost who abandoned me? The dead man who built a new life with someone else? Matilda laughed again, that same broken sound. I don't need your protection, Young. I need you to stay away from my children. Gung Wung couldn't stay hidden anymore. Couldn't stand in the shadows listening to her entire relationship dissolve into lies and violence and a past she'd never been told about. She stepped around the corner of the tiki hut, and both of them froze. Dong looked at her and something died in his eyes. The last bit of hope that maybe she hadn't heard. Maybe she hadn't been standing there long enough to piece it together. But she had. And he could see it on her face. Gung Wung, he started. Don't. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Just, don't. Matilda looked between them, and something like pity crossed her face. You really didn't tell her anything, did you? That's not your concern, Dong said. Actually, I think it is. Matilda turned to Gung Wung fully, and despite everything, there was kindness in her eyes. Sympathy. I'm Matilda. I was engaged to Young Dong 5 years ago before he faked his death and let me believe he was murdered. Those 2 boys on the beach are Jack and Jeremy. His sons. Our sons. And 2 weeks ago, people from his old life tried to kill all 3 of us. Gung Wung felt tears starting, hot and angry behind her eyes. His old life. He was an enforcer, a killer for the Korean mob. They called him the Dragon of Seoul. Matilda's voice was gentle but relentless. And now that life has found us again, which means it's found you too. That's enough, Dong said sharply. No, it's not. Gung Wung found her voice, found the anger underneath the hurt. She's right. I deserve to know. I deserve to know who I'm marrying, who I've been sleeping next to for 2 years, who I've been planning a life with. She looked at Dong, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. Who are you? I'm the same person I've always been with you. You're a liar. The words came out flat. Final. Everything you told me, everything we built, it's all a lie. My feelings for you aren't a lie, but everything else is. Gung Wung twisted the ring off her finger. It came off easier than it should have. She looked at it for a moment, this symbol of a future that never existed, and then held it out to him. I don't know you. I thought I did, but I don't. Gangwon, please. Those men who tried to kill Matilda and your sons. Are they coming here? The silence was answer enough. Oh God. Gangwon's hand closed around the ring. You brought them here. To my home. To our resort. To all these people. I didn't know, Dong said. And now he looked as broken as Matilda had sounded. I swear to you, I didn't know any of this would happen. But it is happening. Gangwon looked at Matilda, at this woman who'd already survived whatever hell Dong's past had put her through. Are you safe? Are the boys safe? I don't know, Matilda admitted. I thought we were. That's why I came here. Then you'll stay. The words came out of Gangwon before she'd fully thought them through. Both of you, all of you, until we figure out what's happening. Gangwon, Dong started. Not for you, she cut him off. For them. For those kids who didn't ask for any of this. She finally looked at him again. But you and I? We're done. It's heartbreaking when innocent people get dragged into danger. If you hate it when past drama destroys a happy future, hit like. Comment, stay safe Gangwon, if you're not siding with the chaos young Dong brought into her life. The walk back to the beach felt like moving through water. Every step heavier than the last. Young Dong followed 10 paces behind Matilda and Gangwon, close enough to protect them if needed, far enough to give them space from the bomb he detonated in both their lives. The two women weren't speaking to each other, but there was an understanding between them now. The understanding of people who'd both been lied to by the same man. The twins were right where Matilda had left them, still arguing over the surfboards, completely oblivious to the fact that their entire world had just shifted on its axis. The taller one, the one with the yellow board, had won apparently. He was dragging it toward the water with grim determination while his brother followed, protesting in rapid Korean. Jack, you promised we'd take turns, the shorter twin was saying. You always do this. You always. I'm older. I get to go first. You're older by 3 minutes. Still counts, Jeremy. Matilda called out to them in Korean, her voice carrying that particular mom tone that meant the argument was over whether they liked it or not. Both boys stopped mid-motion, turning toward her voice, and that's when they saw him. Young Dong had faced down armed enforcers, survived interrogations that would have broken most men, stared into the eyes of crime bosses who'd built empires on fear. None of it compared to standing on a beach while 2 4-year-old boys looked at him with his own eyes. Jack, the bold one, dropped the surfboard and stepped forward. His posture was protective, placing himself slightly in front of his brother in a way that made Young Dong's chest tight. Mommy, who's that man? This is, Matilda's voice caught. She looked at Young Dong, and for a moment there was a question in her eyes. A last chance to run, to stay dead, to keep being the ghost who'd abandoned them. But Gangwon's words were still ringing in his ears. I don't know you. I thought I did, but I don't. And Matilda's accusation from earlier. You don't get to choose what you are, Young. You just are. He was a killer, a liar, a man who'd faked his death and broken the heart of the only woman who'd ever really known him. But he was also, apparently, a father. And maybe that was the one thing he couldn't run from anymore. I'm Young Dong, he said, dropping into a crouch so he was at their eye level. His Korean felt rusty on his tongue after years of speaking mostly English. I'm a friend of your mother's. From a long time ago. Jeremy, the quiet one, tilted his head in that analytical way Young Dong recognized from every mirror he'd ever looked into. You look like us. The words stuck. How did you explain genetics to a 4-year-old? How did you explain anything about this situation? He has our nose, Jack added, moving closer with zero fear. The kid had no sense of stranger danger, apparently, just walked right up to Young Dong and stared at him with unblinking intensity. And our eyebrows. Mommy, why does he have our face? Because. Matilda's voice broke completely. Gangwon reached out and touched her arm, a gesture of support between women united in their wariness of him. Matilda took a breath, steadied herself, and said, Because he's your father. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jack's eyes went wide. Jeremy's jaw literally dropped. Both boys stared at Young Dong like he'd just descended from another planet. Our daddy? Jeremy whispered. But Mommy said our daddy was dead. I thought he was, Matilda said quietly. I was wrong. Jack's response was instantaneous. You're a liar. He launched himself at Young Dong, small fists swinging, tears already streaming down his face. You're lying. Our daddy is a hero. Our daddy died protecting people. You're not him. You're not. Young Dong caught the boy's fists gently, let him pound against his chest, let him scream and rage and grieve for the heroic dead father he'd imagined, the father who was better than the living one standing in front of him. Jack, stop it, Matilda said, but there was no force behind it. Maybe she thought Young Dong deserved it too. I'm sorry, Young Dong said, and he was talking to Jack but looking at all of them. I'm so sorry. You're right. I should have been there. You should have been at my birthday. Jack was sobbing now, the words coming out between hitched breaths. You should have taught me how to ride a bike. Jeremy had nightmares and you weren't there. Mommy cried every night and you weren't there. Every accusation was a knife. Clean and precise and deserved. Jeremy hadn't moved, hadn't said anything, just stood there watching his brother fall apart, his own eyes bright with unshed tears but his face carefully neutral, observing, calculating, deciding. Finally, he spoke. Are you going to leave again? The question was quiet, clinical. The kind of question you asked when you'd already learned that people you loved could disappear without warning, and the best you could do was prepare for it. 4 years old and already building walls. Already protecting himself. Yang Dong looked at Matilda, at Gung Wung, at these two boys who had every right to hate him. No, he said, and meant it with everything he had left. I'm not leaving. Not this time. Liar, Jack said again, but quieter now. Exhausted. Maybe, Young Dong admitted. But I'm going to try not to be. Not anymore. Jeremy stepped forward then, cautious, and did something that broke Young Dong completely. He reached out and touched Young Dong's face, his small hand tracing the line of his jaw, his nose, his eyebrows, mapping the features he'd only ever seen in photographs, trying to make the ghost solid. You're real, Jeremy said wonderingly. I'm real. Do you know how to surf? The question was so unexpected that Young Dong actually laughed, a broken sound. Yeah, I know how to surf. Can you teach us? Jeremy, no, Matilda started. If your mom says it's okay, Young Dong said carefully. But yeah, I can teach you. Jack had stopped hitting him, was now just leaning against Young Dong's chest, crying quietly, his small body shaking with the weight of emotions too big for a 4-year-old to process. Young Dong wrapped his arms around his son, felt the reality of fatherhood settle into his bones like an old wound, heavy, permanent, impossible to ignore. Over the boys' heads, he looked at Matilda. She was crying too now, silent tears tracking down her face. Gung Wung had stepped back, giving the family their moment, but her face was complicated, hurt, angry, but also something softer when she looked at the twins. That's when Young Dong saw him, through the open lobby entrance, maybe 60 feet away. A man in casual resort wear, sunglasses, carrying a newspaper. Nothing remarkable except for the way he was standing. Too still, too focused. His attention locked on the boys. And when he shifted his weight, his sleeve rode up just enough to reveal ink on his forearm. A serpent, coiled and ready to strike. The Viper Syndicate's signature. Every instinct Young Dong had spent 5 years trying to bury roared back to life. His body tensed. His mind catalogued exits, threats, defensive positions. The Dragon of Soul analyzing battlefield terrain in milliseconds. The man in the lobby smiled slightly, tipped his sunglasses down just enough to make eye contact with Young Dong across the distance. Acknowledgement. You see me, I see you. And more importantly, I see them. Then he folded his newspaper, turned, and walked deeper into the hotel. Unhurried, confident. The message was clear. They'd found him. They knew about the boys, and they had all the time in the world. Young Dong pulled Jack and Jeremy closer, his arms tightening protectively around them. Matilda noticed the change in his posture immediately, followed his gaze toward the now empty lobby entrance. What? She whispered. What is it? We need to move, Young Dong said quietly. Now, inside. All of you. Young. They're here, Matilda. He looked at her, let her see the truth in his eyes. The Vipers. They're already here. Young Dong's private villa sat at the far edge of the resort property, separated from the main buildings by a grove of palm trees and accessible only by a single winding path. He'd designed it that way intentionally. One entrance, clear sightlines, defensible. the habits of a man who'd spent years expecting enemies to find him in the night. Now they had... He ushered everyone inside quickly, Jack and Jeremy clutching their mother's hands, confused by the sudden urgency. Gung Wung brought up the rear, her face pale but composed. She'd grabbed a first aid kit from behind the bar without being asked, still thinking like his partner even after everything. The villa's main room was open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Beautiful. Exposed, Yongdong immediately moved to close the blackout shutters he'd installed against hurricane season. Or so he'd told the contractors. Really, they were ballistic fabric reinforced with steel. The windows didn't shatter. They absorbed. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the sectional sofa, away from the windows. "Yongdong, you're scaring the boys," Matilda said, but she was already moving them to the interior of the room. Her own instincts sharp from years of looking over her shoulder. Jack and Jeremy huddled against their mother, eyes wide. They'd gone from meeting their dead father to sensing something was very wrong in the span of 10 minutes. Too much for kids their age. "I need you to be honest with me," Matilda said quietly. "How bad is this?" Yongdong finished securing the last shutter and turned to face them. Gung Wung stood near the kitchen, arms crossed, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Waiting, they all were. He'd spent 5 years lying, 5 years building a persona, a life, a future based on omission and carefully constructed half-truths. The resort owner, the nice guy, the man who'd left his past behind. That man was dead now. Had to be, because the Dragon of Soul was the only thing standing between his family and the people who'd burned them alive for sport. "My real name is Yongdong Park," he started, his voice flat, clinical. "I was born in Seoul, recruited into the Midnight Syndicate when I was 17. By 25, I was their primary enforcer. They called me the Dragon because I was fast, efficient, and left nothing but ash behind." Gung Wung made a small sound, not quite a gasp, more like the air being punched out of her lungs. "I did collections, interrogations, eliminations when necessary. I was good at it. Too good." He kept his eyes on Matilda, because looking at Gung Wung would break him. 5 years ago, the Syndicate went to war with the Viper clan over territory in Seoul. Dozens of people died. The violence was getting sloppy, attracting too much attention. "I wanted out." "So you faked your death," Matilda said, her voice hollow. "Left me to pick up the pieces. I staged a car accident, made it look like the Vipers got me. Left enough blood and evidence that even the Syndicate believed it." His hands clenched at his sides. "I had contacts who owed me favors. Got new documents, new identity. Bought this resort with money I'd been hiding for years. Became someone else." "Someone better?" Gung Wung asked, and there was acid in her tone. "Someone quieter," Yongdong corrected. "But not better. Never better. Just hidden." Jeremy raised his hand like he was in school. "Are you a bad man?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that it cut deeper than any of Jack's accusations on the beach. Yongdong looked at his son, at those eyes that were too much like his own, and couldn't lie. "Yes," he said simply. "I've done bad things. Hurt people. I'm not proud of it, but I can't change it either." "Are you going to hurt us?" Jeremy asked. "Never." The word came out with absolute conviction. "I will never hurt you, any of you. That's why we're here. That's why I need you to listen very carefully." He moved to the coffee table, pulled out his laptop, and brought up the resort's security camera feeds. Multiple screens showing different angles of the property, the beach, the lobby, the parking lot. "The man I saw had a Viper tattoo. That's the signature of the Viper clan. They're not subtle. They're not sophisticated. What they are is brutal and relentless." He pointed to one of the screens showing the main entrance. "If they're here, it's not just one scout. It's a team. And they don't do warnings." "What do they want?" Gung Wung asked. "Me. Dead, preferably. But they'll settle for anyone connected to me." He looked at Matilda. "When they burned your apartment, that wasn't about you. That was bait. They were hoping I'd surface to protect you. And here I am," Matilda said bitterly. "Led them right to you. You didn't know." "Neither did I." Gung Wung's voice was quiet. "Dangerous. I didn't know I was sleeping next to someone with a target on his back. Didn't know this resort. These people, all of them are in danger because of you. You're right." Yongdong met her eyes finally. "You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry." If I could take it back. If I could keep you separate from this. But you can't. She laughed without humor. Because that's not how this works, is it? You don't get to pick and choose who gets hurt by your past. It just spreads. Like poison. Gung wung. Don't. She held up a hand. Just tell me what we do now. How do we keep these kids safe? How do we keep everyone in this resort safe? The fact that she said we, despite everything, made something in Yongdong's chest crack open. He didn't deserve her. Didn't deserve any of them. But he'd use every skill, every contact, every brutal lesson the syndicate had taught him to protect them anyway. First, we locked down the resort. I'm calling in sick, sending guests home, closing for emergency maintenance. Anyone who doesn't need to be here, leaves. He pulled out his phone, started typing. Second, I have contacts, people who owe me, security contractors who don't ask questions. They'll be here by tonight. Security contractors, Matilda repeated. You mean mercenaries? I mean people who know how to fight the kind of people coming for us. And third? Gung Wung asked. Third, we prepare for the possibility that it's not enough. Yongdong opened a drawer in the coffee table, pulled out a compact pistol. Gung Wung flinched. I teach you both how to shoot, how to hide, how to protect the boys if I can't. Jesus Christ, Gung Wung whispered. Mommy, what's happening? Jack asked, his voice small and scared. Matilda pulled both boys close, her face hard. What's happening is that the bad men who burned our house found us. But your father, she stumbled over the word, is going to keep us safe. Is he? She looked at Yongdong with something between hope and pure cynicism. Or is he going to run again when things get too dangerous? Fake another death? Leave us to clean up the mess? I'm not running. Yongdong's voice was steel. Not from this. Not from them. Not from you. You've said that before. I know, and I broke that promise. But this is different. They've seen the boys. They know what they look like. Even if I ran, they'd still come for you, for Jack and Jeremy. Because that's what the Vipers do. They don't just kill their targets, they erase bloodlines. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Gung Wung looked sick. Matilda's arms tightened around the twins. So what? Matilda's voice shook. We just wait here for them to attack? We prepare. We fortify. And when they come because they will come, we make them regret ever finding us. Yongdong's phone buzzed. A reply from one of his contacts. Then another. Then a third. His network, dormant for 5 years, was waking up. The dragon might have been hiding, but he never forgot how to breathe fire. Gung Wung walked to the window, peered through a gap in the shutters at the paradise outside. The beach where tourists should be lounging. The water where children should be playing. All of it about to become a war zone because of choices made years before she even knew Yongdong existed. I should hate you, she said quietly. I should take those kids and run as far from you as possible. You should, Yongdong agreed. But I don't. She turned to face him, and there were tears in her eyes. I don't know why. Maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I'm in shock. But I look at those boys and I think about what happens to them if you're not here. What happens if the only person who knows how to fight these monsters walks away? Gung Wung. So I'm staying. Not for you. Not for us. For them. She looked at Jack and Jeremy. But when this is over, when everyone's safe, we're done. You understand that? I understand. Good. She wiped her eyes roughly. Now show me how to use that gun. The Viper Syndicate targets women and children to get what they want. If you can't stand cowards who prey on the weak, hit that subscribe button right now. Comment cowards to show you stand against this toxic behavior. The sun dropped below the horizon like a stone, and with it went any illusion of safety. Yongdong had spent the afternoon transforming the villa into a fortress. Extra ammunition stashed in strategic locations. First aid supplies within reach. Escape routes mapped and rehearsed until Jack could recite them in his sleep, and Jeremy had memorized every exit without being asked. The security contractors he'd called never arrived. Their phones went straight to voicemail. All 3 of them. Men who'd survived wars in 6 countries. Who'd pulled Yongdong out of situations that should have been death sentences, suddenly unreachable. That told him everything he needed to know. The Vipers had gotten to them first. Money or threats or bodies. It didn't matter. He was alone. Not alone. He had Gung Wung, who'd spent 2 hours learning to handle the compact Glock with grim determination, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. He had Matilda, who already knew how to shoot from their years together, muscle memory returning like riding a bicycle. And he had 2 4-year-old boys who should have been worrying about bedtime stories, not memorizing where the safe room was hidden behind the false wall in the master bedroom. Night fell fast in the tropics. One moment the sky was burning orange and purple, the next it was black velvet pricked with stars. Beautiful. Perfect for an assault. Young Dong stood at the window, watching the resort through a gap in the shutters. He'd evacuated most of the guests that afternoon, with a manufactured story about contaminated water and health violations. Refunds issued, transportation arranged, apologies offered. 20 families gone within 4 hours. But not all of them. Some had refused to leave. Some were already gone before he could reach them. The lobby was dark now. So was the tiki bar. The beach bungalows. He'd shut down the main generators himself. Told the remaining staff to shelter in place in the reinforced storage building near the docks. Made it look like a resort-wide power failure. Made it look like chaos. Made it easier to see who was moving in the dark. How many? Matilda asked quietly. She'd put the boys down an hour ago in the safe room, read them stories until they'd finally crashed from exhaustion. Now she stood next to him, her own weapon holstered at her hip, looking more like the woman he'd known 5 years ago than the terrified mother from this afternoon. 3 on the North Beach, 2 more near the bungalows. At least 1 in the lobby, maybe 2. Young Dong tracked movement through the security feeds on his laptop, the cameras running on battery backup. Professional spacing. Military discipline. These aren't syndicate thugs. These are contractors. The Vipers hired mercenaries? Looks like it. He zoomed in on one of the figures. Body armor under casual clothes. Night vision goggles. Suppressed weapons. Good ones, too. This is a kill team, not a message. Gung Wung appeared from the hallway, checking the magazine on her Glock for the 3rd time. Nervous habit. The boys? Asleep, Matilda said. Finally. Good. Keep them that way. Young Dong closed the laptop, his own weapons already strapped and ready. 2 pistols, a knife at his ankle, another at his back. The dragon's teeth, sharp and waiting. When I give the signal, you take them into the safe room. Lock it from inside. Don't open it for anyone except me. What's the signal? Gung Wung asked. You'll know it. That's not. The lights died. Every single one. The villa, the exterior floods, the emergency exit signs. Complete blackness for 2 full seconds before his eyes adjusted and the world resolved into shades of gray and shadow. That's the signal, Young Dong said. Somewhere outside, glass shattered. Not close. Maybe 3 bungalows down. A controlled breach, quick and professional. They were testing his response time, seeing how fast he'd react. Go, Young Dong said. Now. Matilda didn't argue. Grabbed Gung Wung's arm and pulled her toward the bedroom, toward the safe room hidden behind false paneling that would take someone hours to find if they didn't know it was there. Soundproofed, reinforced, stocked with supplies for 3 days. Gung Wung stopped at the doorway, looked back. Young, I'll be fine. I've done this before. That's not reassuring. It's all I've got. He met her eyes across the dark room. Keep them safe. That's all that matters now. She nodded once, then disappeared into the hallway. He heard the bedroom door close. Heard the distinctive click of the safe room's lock engaging. Good. They were secure. Now he could work. Young Dong moved to the kitchen, killed the laptop screen so no light would give away his position. His heartbeat had already slowed, his breathing steady and controlled. This was familiar territory. The hunt. The stalked becoming the stalker. 5 years pretending to be civilized, and it took less than 5 seconds for the dragon to remember exactly what he was. Another sound. Closer this time, the crunch of footsteps on the gravel path leading to his villa. Multiple sets. At least 2, maybe 3. They weren't trying to be quiet anymore. Either they thought he was unarmed and panicking, or they wanted him to know they were coming. Psychological warfare. Let the target hear death approaching. Let the fear do half the work. They didn't know who they were dealing with. Young Dong moved through his own villa like smoke, years of training overriding any need for light. He knew every board that creaked, every corner that offered cover, every angle that could be exploited. This was his ground, his fortress. His family was inside these walls. They should have brought more men. The front door exploded inward. Not picked or finessed, just breached with raw force. The frame splintered, the door itself slamming against the interior wall. 3 figures poured through immediately, weapons up, moving in perfect tactical formation. Professionals, just like he'd thought. They swept the main room quickly, efficiently, night vision turning the darkness into green-lit clarity. They'd see the furniture, the closed shutters, the empty space where a target should be panicking. What they wouldn't see was the dragon perched on the kitchen counter in the blind spot between their entry angles and the main room, perfectly still, waiting for them to commit. The lead man made it 3 steps inside before Young Dong moved. He dropped from the counter without a sound, landed behind the rear guard, and had the knife from his ankle buried in the man's kidney before his partners even registered movement. The mercenary started to scream, but Young Dong's hand was already clamping over his mouth, twisting the blade up and into the lung, turning the scream into a wet gurgle. The body dropped. The other 2 spun, raising their weapons. Too slow. Young Dong was already rolling left, using the falling body as a shield, his own pistol clearing leather and putting 2 rounds center mass into the second man before his finger found the trigger. The suppressor made it sound like someone coughing. Quiet. Professional. The third man got off a burst. 3 rounds that chewed into the couch where Young Dong had been half a second before. Return fire came immediately from the bedroom hallway. Gung Wung, covering him from a position he'd told her to take if things went wrong. Her shot went wide, but it made the mercenary duck. That was all Young Dong needed. He closed the distance in 2 strides, slapped the man's rifle aside, and put his pistol under the chin. 1 shot. Up through the soft palate and into the brain. The body hit the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Silence. 3 seconds of it. 5. 10. Clear. Young Dong called softly. Jesus Christ. Gung Wung whispered from the hallway. Did you just... Get back in the safe room. This was just the breach team. The main assault is still coming. As if to punctuate his words, automatic weapons fire erupted from the beach. Not aimed at the villa. At the staff quarters. They were clearing the resort systematically, eliminating witnesses, anyone who might call for help. Young Dong moved to the window, peered out through a crack in the shutters. More figures moving now. At least 6 additional contacts, maybe more. All converging on his position. They knew where he was now. Knew he'd killed their entry team. Knew this was going to be harder than they'd planned. Good. Let them come. Let them see what happened when you threatened the dragon's family. Let them remember why Seoul's underworld used to whisper his name like a curse. Young Dong checked his weapons, counted his ammunition, and smiled without humor in the darkness. 5 years of peace had made him soft, made him forget what he was capable of when everything he loved was on the line. Time to remind them. Time to remind himself. The war council was over. The war had begun. Young Dong didn't wait for them to come to him. The dragon had never been defensive, never been the prey. 5 years of serving coconut drinks hadn't changed the fundamental truth of what he was. A predator who'd learned to hunt in Seoul's blood-soaked streets. He went out through the villa's back door, the one that led directly to the beach, moving low and fast through the palm grove. The mercenaries were advancing on his position from multiple angles. Textbook pincer movement, probably expecting him to barricade inside and wait for the inevitable breach. Instead, he flanked them. The first one never saw him coming. The mercenary was posted near the tiki bar, covering the main approach to the villa, his night vision scanning the paths. Professional stance, good weapon discipline, probably ex-military, maybe special forces, the kind of operator who got paid 6 figures for a single night's work. He died for half that, and it still wasn't worth it. Young Dong came at him from the blind spot created by the bar's thatched roof overhang, moving through the sand without sound. The knife went in just below the ear, angled up into the brainstem. Instant shutdown. No sound. No struggle. Just a body that stopped being a threat and became dead weight. Young Dong lowered him to the sand, took his radio, his spare magazines, listened to the chatter. Alpha 2, status? Silence where Alpha 2 should have responded. 2. Confirm position. More silence. We've got a ghost. All units. Weapons free. Target is armed and extremely dangerous. Now they knew. Now they understood this wasn't going to be the easy payday they'd been promised. Young Dong moved again, circling wide toward the surfboard rack. 6 boards still standing, bright colors muted in the darkness. He grabbed one, the yellow board Jack had wanted, and kept moving. 2 more mercenaries were advancing up the beach, covering each other's movement with practiced efficiency. They'd adapted quickly, switched from assault formation to hunter-killer pairs. Smart, would have worked against most targets. Young Dong wasn't most targets. He waited until they passed his position, until their attention was forward on the villa, then came at them from behind. The surfboard swung like a bat, 7 feet of fiberglass and foam connecting with the rear man's head with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. The mercenary went down hard, his night vision goggles shattering, his weapon flying into the sand. His partner spun, raising his rifle, but Young Dong was already inside his guard, used the surfboard as a shield, caught the first burst of automatic fire, felt the rounds punch through the board inches from his face. Then he drove forward, all his weight and momentum behind the broken surfboard, slamming it into the mercenary's throat. The man went down choking. Young Dong followed him to the ground, drove his knee into the chest, and finished it with the knife. Quick, clinical, no hesitation. 3 down. At least 6 more somewhere in the dark. The radio crackled. "This is Team Lead. Regroup at Rally Point, Charlie. The client didn't tell us we were hunting the fucking dragon." The dragon. So they knew. Knew who he was, what he'd been. And they were regrouping, which meant they were scared. Good. Fear made people sloppy. Young Dong grabbed a tiki torch from the bar area, the kind with real fire that tourists love to photograph. The oil-soaked head burned bright and hot. He moved toward the bungalows, toward where he'd heard the chatter say Rally Point Charlie was located. They wanted to regroup? He'd give them something to regroup around. The first bungalow went up fast. Dry thatch, wooden structure, designed for aesthetics, not fire safety. The torch sailed through an open window, and within seconds flames were licking up the walls. The fire lit up the beach like daylight, killing every night vision advantage the mercenaries had. Someone opened fire. Panicked 3-round bursts that went wide, chewing into palm trees and sand. Young Dong tracked the muzzle flash, returned fire with measured precision. 2 shots, center mass. The firing stopped. Another mercenary broke cover, trying to flank around the burning bungalow. Young Dong was waiting. Let him get 3 steps into the open, then put him down with a headshot that was more instinct than aim. 20 years of violence had made that kind of shot automatic, like breathing. The radio was screaming now. Multiple voices. Panic setting in. "We need to abort. This wasn't the mission brief. Client said he was a resort owner, not a fucking..." The transmission cut off. Someone had killed the channel. Probably the team leader, trying to maintain control. But it was too late. The team was fracturing, fear overwhelming training. Young Dong moved through the chaos like a ghost, using the fire and shadows to stay invisible. He'd become the dragon again, and the dragon didn't lose on his own ground. Another mercenary went down near the water's edge, killed with the pistol he'd taken from the first body. Another tried to surrender, hands up, weapon dropped. Young Dong shot him anyway. These men had come for his family, for his children. Mercy was a luxury he couldn't afford. What he didn't know was that the safe room door had cracked open. That Jeremy, unable to sleep through the gunfire, had slipped past his exhausted mother and made it to the villa's main room. That Jack had followed his brother, always following, and now both boys stood in the doorway watching their father work, watching the dragon hunt. Young Dong cornered the last 2 mercenaries near the dock. They'd run out of places to hide, backed up against the water with nowhere to go. Professional to the end, they tried to fight their way out. Coordinated fire, tactical movement, everything by the book. It didn't matter. Young Dong used the dock pilings for cover, waited for them to empty their magazines on full auto, then moved while they were reloading. Close quarters now, too close for guns. He went through them like water through paper. Strikes that broke bones and crushed windpipes, movements that were pure violence refined into art. The first man's neck snapped with an audible crack. The second tried to draw a sidearm, but Young Dong caught his wrist, twisted it until something gave, then drove the man's own knife up under his ribs and into his heart. The body slid off the blade and into the water with barely a splash. Silence. Real silence this time. No gunfire, no radio chatter, no footsteps in the sand. Just the crackle of flames from the burning bungalow and the gentle lap of waves against the dock. Dong stood there, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't his, feeling the adrenaline slowly drain away. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from coming back to himself, from remembering what he'd been trying to forget for 5 years. He was the Dragon of Soul. And the dragon protected his own. When he turned back toward the villa, he saw them, 2 small silhouettes in the doorway, Jack and Jeremy, frozen in place, their eyes wide with shock and something that might have been fear or might have been awe or might have been both. They'd seen everything. The violence, the killing. The father they'd just met that afternoon transformed into something brutal and efficient and utterly terrifying. "Boys," he said quietly, his voice hoarse, "you should be in the safe room." Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Just stared at him like he was a stranger. Like he was a monster. Maybe he was. Jack found his voice first, small and shaking. You killed all those men." "I did. No point in lying. No point in softening it. They came to hurt you, hurt your mom. I couldn't let that happen." "Are you going to kill us too?" Jeremy asked. And the question was so innocent, so genuinely confused, that it broke something in Dong's chest. "Never. I would die before I let anyone hurt you, including me." He took a step toward them, then stopped when they both flinched. "I know I'm scary. I know what you just saw was—" "You were like a superhero," Jack whispered, and there was wonder in his voice now instead of fear. "Like in the movies. You saved us." "I'm not a hero, Jack. Heroes are good people. I'm just—" "Our dad," Jeremy finished. "You're our dad and you protected us." Dong didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to explain that protection and heroism weren't the same thing. That what they'd watched was murder, clean and simple, justified only by the fact that the alternative was their deaths. Behind the boys, Matilda appeared, her face pale. She'd seen too. Seen him become the man she'd thought she'd left behind. The man she'd loved and feared in equal measure. "Get them inside," Dong said quietly. "This isn't over. That was just the first wave." But Matilda just stood there, staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "I forgot," she said finally. "I forgot what you were capable of when someone threatens what's yours." "Matilda, thank you." The words were barely a whisper. "For not running this time. These mercenaries are just doing it for the money, destroying a family for a paycheck. If you believe loyalty is worth more than gold, press like. Comment family first if you're not siding with these greedy villains." Dawn came slow and reluctant, like it didn't want to illuminate what the night had left behind. The beach looked like a war zone because that's exactly what it had been. Bodies in the sand, the bungalow still smoldering, reduced to charred skeleton and ash, bullet casings glinting in the early light like scattered coins. The yellow surfboard split in half, its bright color now stained dark. Dong sat on the villa's back steps, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold that felt obscene given what had happened here. His shirt was off, discarded somewhere during the fight, and now he could catalog the damage. A graze along his ribs where one of the mercenaries had gotten lucky. Bruises blooming across his torso in purple and black, his knuckles split and bleeding, a deeper cut on his shoulder that was still seeping. Nothing fatal, nothing that wouldn't heal. But he felt every year of his 38, felt the weight of 5 years of soft living colliding with the brutal reality of what he'd once been. The dragon's body remembered how to fight, but it also remembered how much fighting cost. The villa door opened behind him. Gung Wung emerged with the first aid kit, her face drawn and exhausted. She'd stayed up all night watching the security feeds, covering the approaches while Matilda kept the boys calm in the safe room. Now she looked at the carnage spread across her paradise and something in her expression was just tired. "Let me see," she said, settling beside him on the steps. Not asking, stating. Dong didn't argue. He angled his shoulder toward her, watched as she opened the kit with practiced efficiency. She'd learned field medicine during her Peace Corps years in Guatemala, before she'd found her way to running a resort. Another thing about her he'd loved. She could handle a crisis without falling apart. The antiseptic stung when she applied it, but he didn't flinch. Compared to everything else, this was nothing. "That one needs stitches," Gung Wung said, examining the shoulder wound. "I can do it, but it's going to hurt." "Do it." She threaded the needle without another word, her hand steady despite the tremor he could see in her shoulders. The needle bit into his skin, pulling flesh closed with efficient precision. He watched her work instead of watching the beach, saw the concentration on her face, the way she bit her lower lip when she focused. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for all of this, for bringing this into your life. I know you are." She tied off a stitch, started another. "Doesn't change what happened." "No, it doesn't. Those men, the ones you killed, they probably had families, people who loved them." Her voice was flat, clinical, "and you just executed them. They came here to murder children, Gung-Wung, to kill you and Matilda and 2 4-year-old boys because someone paid them enough money. I don't regret what I did. I know, that's what scares me." She finished the stitches, cut the thread, covered the wound with gauze and tape. "I watched you on the security feeds. You weren't angry. You weren't scared. You were just efficient, like it was a job. It was what I was trained to do." "For how long? How many years have you been that person?" 15. Give or take. He met her eyes. "From 17 to 32. Half of my life. And you just stopped? Just walked away and became someone else?" "I tried to." He gestured at the beach, the bodies, the evidence of what he still was. "Clearly it didn't work as well as I hoped." Gung-Wung was quiet for a long moment, packing up the first aid kit with methodical care. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "The boys were watching. Matilda said they slipped out of the safe room. Saw you fight. I know. I saw them. Jack thinks you're a superhero now. Spent an hour after we got them back to bed talking about how his dad is the strongest man in the world." She laughed without humor. "Jeremy asked me if you were going to kill more people. Just asked it like he was asking about the weather. What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth, that you would do whatever it took to keep them safe. That sometimes protecting people means doing scary things." She looked at him fully now. "Was I wrong?" "No, you weren't wrong. Young Dong, I need you to answer something for me. Honestly. No more lies, no more half-truths." "Okay. Are there more coming? More like tonight?" He wanted to lie. Wanted to tell her it was over, that the threat had been neutralized, that they could go back to their lives. But she'd asked for honesty. And after everything, she deserved at least that much. "I don't know," he said. "This was a kill team. Professional. Expensive. Someone paid them a lot of money to come here. To do this. Could have been the Vipers. Could have been someone else from my past. Until I know who hired them, I can't know if there are more. So we're not safe. You were never safe. Not as long as you were with me. I just managed to hide it for 2 years." Gung-Wung stood, walked to the edge of the steps, and looked out at the ocean that was turning from black to blue with the rising sun. "I meant what I said yesterday, about us being done. I know, but I also meant what I said about staying. About protecting those kids." She turned back to him. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to figure out who did this. You're going to end this threat, permanently. And you're going to do it without lying to me again." Gung-Wung, "I'm not done." Her voice had steel in it now. "When this is over, when everyone is safe, you're going to sign over your half of the resort to me. You're going to disappear again. Properly this time. Somewhere far from here. Somewhere your past can't follow. And you're going to leave me out of it." The words hurt worse than any wound he'd taken tonight. "You want me gone. I want you alive," she corrected. "And everyone around you alive. Which apparently can't happen if you're here." Tears were starting now. Angry tears she wiped away roughly. "I love you. God help me, I still love you. But love isn't enough when people die just for being near you. What about the boys? About Matilda? That's between you and her. Not my business anymore." But her voice cracked on the words, betraying the lie. It was her business. She'd fought beside them, protected them, had already claimed them in the way that Gung-Wung claimed everything she cared about completely and without reservation. The villa door opened again. Matilda this time. The boys were still sleeping inside. She looked at the beach, at the bodies that would need to be dealt with before tourists started waking up in the remaining bungalows, at young Dong sitting bloodied on the steps, with Gung-Wung standing guard over him. "How bad?" Matilda asked. "Nothing fatal," Gung-Wung answered. "He'll live." "Unfortunately," Matilda said, "but there was no heat in it. She moved to stand beside Gung Wung, two women united in their complicated relationship with the same dangerous man. The boys want to see you, to make sure you're okay. I'll come in a minute. Young. Matilda's voice stopped him before he could stand. What you did last night, the violence, the killing. I watched it on the cameras, all of it. He waited for the condemnation, the horror, the rejection he deserved. Thank you, she said instead, for not running, for staying, for fighting. I told you I wouldn't leave. You did. And for the first time in 5 years, I actually believe you. She looked at Gung Wung, some understanding passing between them. We need to talk, all three of us, about what happens next. I know who to call, Young Dong said quietly. About the bodies, about cleaning this up. I have contacts who handle this kind of thing. More criminals, Gung Wung said. Yes, but useful ones. He stood slowly, feeling every bruise protest. This isn't over. Whoever sent this team will know they failed. They'll either send more or come themselves. Then what do we do? Matilda asked. Young Dong looked at the two women who defined his life in different ways. At the paradise he'd tried to build that was now stained with blood. At the future he'd thought he could have that had just gone up in smoke. We stop waiting for them to come to us, he said. We go on the offensive. We find out who wants us dead, and we end them first. More killing, Gung Wung whispered. More survival, Young Dong corrected. Because the alternative is watching everyone I care about die. And I've had enough of that for one lifetime. The cleanup took 3 hours. Young Dong's contacts arrived in unmarked vans just as the sun cleared the horizon. Men who asked no questions and left no evidence. They worked with the efficiency of people who'd done this 100 times before, made bodies disappear, scrubbed blood from sand, and documented everything for later disposal. The kind of service that cost a fortune and guaranteed silence. By the time the remaining resort guests started emerging for breakfast, the beach looked almost normal. The burned bungalow had been cordoned off with maintenance tape, a plausible story about electrical fires already spreading through the grapevine. No one questioned it. Tourists never did. They saw what they wanted to see, believed what was convenient. Young Dong watched from the villa as life tried to reassert itself. A couple walking hand in hand near the water, kids building sandcastles, the illusion of paradise maintained through careful lies and strategic cleanup. Just like his life for the past 5 years, the mercenaries' equipment had been collected, catalogued, and prepared for disposal. Weapons, tactical gear, communications equipment, all of it expensive, all of it military grade. Someone had invested serious money into this operation, and Young Dong needed to know who. He was going through the last mercenary's phone when it rang. Unknown number, international code he didn't recognize. For a moment he considered letting it go to voicemail, but instinct told him this was important. This was the reason behind last night's bloodbath. He answered without speaking, and waited for the other person to commit first. A laugh came through the line, low and familiar and cold enough to freeze his blood. A laugh he'd heard 1,000 times in briefing rooms and execution chambers, standing over bodies and closing deals in Seoul's underworld. Dragon, the voice said in Korean. I was wondering if you'd have the balls to answer. Choi Min-jun, head of the Midnight Syndicate. The man Young Dong had served for 15 years. The man he'd faked his death to escape. The man who should have believed he was dead and forgotten 5 years ago. How long have you known? Young Dong kept his voice neutral, professional, but his hand tightened on the phone hard enough to make the case creak. That you were alive? About 6 months. That you were running a beach resort playing house with some American woman? 3 months. That your ex-wife and bastard children were heading to the same resort? 2 weeks. Another laugh, this one sharper. You're predictable, Dragon. Always have been. You think you're being clever, but you're just following patterns I can read like a book. If you've known for 6 months, why wait until now? Because I wanted to see if you'd really gone soft, if the legend had truly died, or if he was just sleeping. A pause. The Vipers were happy to help me test that theory. I told them where to find Matilda, suggested they might find you at the same location. They were eager for revenge after what you did to their operations 5 years ago. You used them, used us. I used resources available to me. The Vipers got their revenge attempt. I got my answer. 12 professional contractors dead in one night. Very impressive. The dragon still has teeth. Young Dong's mind was racing, cataloging information, assessing threats. What do you want? What I've always wanted. Loyalty. Service. You were my best enforcer, Dragon. 15 years of perfection. Then you decided to die rather than continue serving me. That was disappointing. I was out. You knew I wanted out. No one is out until I say they're out. The warmth had drained from Choi's voice now, leaving only ice. You made me look weak. Made other people think they could leave too. I had to make examples. Killed 3 good men just to prove a point after you died. That's on you, not me. Everything you touch is on you, Dragon. Including those children playing in the sand right now. Beautiful boys. They look just like you. Such a shame it would be if something happened to them. The world went red at the edges. Dong walked to the window, looked out at the beach. Jack and Jeremy were there, building a sandcastle under Matilda's watchful eye. Gung sat nearby, her body language protective despite everything. His family, all of them, in one place, vulnerable. Touch them, and I'll burn your entire organization to ash, Dong said quietly. There's the dragon I remember, all fire and threats. Choi's laugh was genuinely pleased. But you're not in a position to threaten me. I have your location. I have surveillance on everyone you care about. I have resources you can't imagine. Last night was a test. Tomorrow could be an army. What do you want? I want you to come home. Back to Seoul. Back to the syndicate. Choi's voice dropped, becoming almost paternal. One last job, Dragon. Do this for me, and I'll let your little family live in peace. You can go back to serving cocktails and pretending you're not a killer. I'll even throw in protection. Make sure no one else comes for them. And if I refuse, then I send that army I mentioned. Not contractors this time. My own people. 50 men who've been training for years, who worship the legend of the dragon and want to prove themselves by killing him. They'll burn that resort to bedrock. Everyone dies. The American woman, your ex-wife, those beautiful children, every tourist, every staff member, every witness. And you get to watch before I put a bullet in your head personally. The phone felt like a weapon in Dong's hand. Something he could use to hurt, to destroy. But it was just plastic and circuits, and the threat was real and immediate, and 6,000 miles away with resources he couldn't match. What's the job? He heard himself ask. We'll discuss details when you arrive. Let's just say there's a politician who needs to be convinced to support certain legislation. Convinced permanently, if you understand my meaning. An assassination. Such an ugly word. I prefer problem solving. Choi's voice turned businesslike. You have 48 hours to arrive in Seoul. I'll send coordinates. Come alone. Complete the job. Then you're free. Really free this time. I'll even put it in writing if that makes you feel better. Your word means nothing. Perhaps. But it's the only option you have where everyone you love survives the week. A pause. Oh, and Dragon, don't think about running. Don't think about trying to hide them somewhere safe. I have eyes everywhere. The moment you deviate from my instructions, the moment you try to be clever, I make a phone call, and your family dies screaming. Understand? Dong looked out at the beach. At Jack carefully patting sand into place, his tongue sticking out in concentration. At Jeremy drawing elaborate patterns with a stick, already an artist at 4 years old. At Matilda laughing at something one of them said, the sound carrying across the sand like music. At Gung watching them all with an expression that was equal parts heartbreak and love. His family. The thing he'd died to protect 5 years ago. The thing he'd abandoned to keep safe. The thing that had found him anyway, despite all his lies and careful planning. I understand, he said. Excellent. I'll send the details within the hour. Don't disappoint me, Dragon. I'd hate to have to kill those children. They remind me of you at that age. So much potential. Choi hung up without another word. Dong stood there holding the dead phone, feeling the weight of the choice he'd just made settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. He could stay and fight, could fortify the resort, call in every favor he had, turn this place into a fortress. But Choi was right about the resources. An army against one man, even a man called the Dragon, was just math, and the math said everyone died, or he could go back, could put himself back in the cage he'd escaped 5 years ago, could become the weapon one more time, do one more job, kill one more person for a man he despised, trade his freedom for their lives. Not really a choice at all. Matilda looked up and saw him in the window. Her smile faded immediately. She knew that expression. Had seen it before when he was planning operations, calculating casualties, accepting that some things couldn't be avoided. She stood, said something to Gung Wung, and started walking toward the villa. Gung Wung followed, both women moving with purpose. They'd heard his side of the conversation through the security system, probably. Or they just knew. Women who'd loved dangerous men developed instincts. Yong Dong met them at the door. Who was it? Matilda asked, though her face said she already knew. Choi Min-jun. He's alive. He knows about all of you, and he wants me back. Back where? Gung Wung asked. Seoul. One last job. Then he promises to let us go. Promises, Matilda repeated bitterly. The same promises he made when you joined? The same promises that kept you for 15 years? I don't have another option. He'll send an army if I refuse. He'll kill everyone. So you go back to being a killer, back to being his weapon. Gung Wung's voice was hollow. After everything that happened last night, after I watched you become that person again, now you're choosing to stay that person. I'm choosing to keep you alive. Yongdong looked at both of them. All of you. If that means going back, if that means one more job, then that's what I do. And if he doesn't let you go after? If one job becomes two, becomes forever? Matilda demanded. Then I make sure he can't follow through on his threats first. Yongdong's voice was cold now. Pure dragon. I go back. I do the job. And then I cut the head off the snake so it can never threaten any of you again. You're talking about killing him, Gung Wung said. I'm talking about ending this. Permanently. He looked out at the beach, at Jack and Jeremy playing in the sand as the sun climbed higher. They deserve better than living in fear, than looking over their shoulders wondering when their father's past will come for them again. I can't give them back the 5 years I missed. But I can give them a future. Or you could die trying, Matilda said quietly. Maybe. But that's better than doing nothing and watching them die instead. The syndicate thinks they can own people forever. If you believe everyone deserves a chance to be free from their past, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Comment break the chains if you want to see Yongdong take them down in part 2.